How's it going out there, YouTube? My name is Jesse, and I am the curator for the Golden Age, and this is another
Lost Heroes of the Golden Age.
Yes, this is Lost Heroes of the Golden Age, and this time we're doing...
I feel cheated.
What do you mean?
It's not the Flame from Fox Publication.
I never said it was.
Why do you keep doing obscure heroes?
Because they seem to like it when we cover obscure heroes. In fact, while I was doing the research for Farrell, I found a whole bunch of obscure characters while going down an extremely long rabbit hole.
You documented it this time, didn't you?
Yes, I did remember to document them this time.
You still haven't found that other hero you were looking for.
It is somewhere on Centaur Comics, and I will find it. Anyways, yes, we are doing the Flame from Farrell Comics, and I am actually confused to how this character got their name. I mean, usually when you have a name, they're somehow associated with your power, except when we did the Cyclone, and the Cyclone had nothing to do with air powers. But this guy does... His name is the Flame, and in only 2 issues does he really have anything to do with fire. And it's not even something within his control. So, I don't know why they gave him the Flame. I mean, the guy has super strength, but I honestly don't know how he isn't just a complete backup feature. He has 3 comic books that he's on the cover of. He headlines. And it doesn't make any sense. It wasn't even that great of a story, yet he somehow got 3 issues out of it. Now, maybe because it was the 50s and coming up with a new character, you're going to automatically give him a story. It's like the very tail end of the Golden Age leading into the Silver Age, but it's a really weird one. I covered everything that I could with this. So... and when we do the first issue, if you want to give it a shot, it's the Flame from Ajax-Farrell. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one, and maybe you can explain this character better than I can. I let you know who he is. Maybe you can tell me why they decided to call him the Flame. The Flame, Kip Adams, first appeared in Flame number 1 in 1954. Actually, this says December 1954 to January 1955. That is the date that's listed, so it's been given 2 dates here. The original publication is Farrell, but in the very next issue, they'll have the Ajax-Farrell publication. So we'll just go ahead and call this Ajax-Farrell. And there is nobody with creating the Flame. Now, this is a really unusual creation. I would hazard to say that the name of this character is actually rather stupid, because he calls himself the Flame, but he doesn't use or control fire. And that's the most unusual thing about this. Now, he does possess superhuman strength. I mean, he lifted up a tank and ripped the treads off of it. So he does have superhuman strength. But there's only 2 times where it shows him using flames. And it's in his very first comic. In the splash page, they show him charging in at guys and flames shooting out of his hand. Now, splash pages aren't usually reminiscent of the entire issue. And in the second appearance, which was part of the same comic book, each comic had 2 appearances, he is tied up and hung upside down, and as he swings to get the motion to break out of the chains, it generates flame, and he's able to use that to break out. And that is the only time he is ever shown using fire. So why he's called the Flame doesn't make any sense whatsoever. The only power that he uses and have control of is super strength. Okay, now there is no origin. He is, and everybody accepts it, which is very common in the Golden Age. And he's a chemist. And you'd think that that would play into his origin. And if they'd gone past 3 issues, maybe they would have given him an origin where he reminisced and talked to his girlfriend about who he was. He does have a girlfriend in his civilian identity named Susan Page. And she is a reporter. Kind of. She does report, but it's just kind of weird. She likes the Flame. She thinks that he's a real hero, but not to an infatuation where there's like a love triangle, which was also very common in the Golden Age, where the hero would have his woman being in love with both him and his superhuman identity, which was a very common theme in the Golden Age. But I don't know why he calls himself the Flame. This is as ridiculous as when we reviewed the Cyclone, and even though he was called the Cyclone, he didn't have any wind powers. I mean, he does kind of possess fire, but anyways, apparently his weakness is water, because in the second appearance, the way they knock him out and disable him, which I think it sapped his strength, is they hit him with a high-pressure water hose, and that knocked him out. Now, I believe it was in the 5th appearance, we saw that he can also stand an incredible amount of heat, because he had liquid metal poured on him, and he walked out of it like it wasn't even an issue. And he didn't even wear... in the 3rd issue, he would have a torch emblem on his chest. He didn't have that in the 1st issue or the 2nd issue, so there were 4 issues where he was not wearing a flame emblem. But in the 5th issue, for 2 stories, he was. And I found this page kind of amusing. When someone's reminiscing about the Flame's cases, you see 4 other instances of him being super strong. And in 3 of these 4, you see the Flame emblem and torch emblem. So I'm like, where were these stories? I want to see these stories. These stories were silly, and I guess reminiscent of the 50s. I mean, the artwork is good. I mean, I did enjoy the artwork. I mean, some good shadowing and texting, some nice action movements, but the stories overall weren't all that engaging and kind of silly. Not silly, but just kind of silly in general. We'll go ahead and cover the first appearance, and you'll get a sense for what I mean. These stories could have gone with a little bit of someone going over them a little better. It's just... We'll go through the first appearance and you'll see what I mean. Let's get into this. All the cover appearances, all the feature stories, and his second appearance in each one of these comics was also the final story as well. Oh, and something interesting. In the very first comic, there are 4 stories. He has 2 of them. He also has a guest spot in the 3rd story. And the 3rd story is actually based off of Real World, but the Flame has a guest appearance at the beginning and the end of the 3rd story, which, yeah, it's ridiculous. So let's go ahead and cover this first appearance, and you'll see why it feels a little disconjointed. This whole thing starts off a little rough. The city was appalled by the sign of the red cat. What did it mean, and why were the people who wore the signs usually victims of a new frightening crime wave? This was the problem the Flame decided to tackle, and you can bet a firebolt he'd stick with it until he made a bullseye in the tattooed target. And you see a flash page here where he was shooting fire at these guys on the dock. This would have been a magnificent idea, is to have flamethrowers in his gloves. Gigantic missed opportunity. Okay, the outskirts of the city was shrouded in the shadows, but some of the shadows were very real and deadly. So we see these two guys waiting for two other guys. Here they come. Two more to add to our roll calls. Our long wait is going to pay off after all. So the two guys waiting for two other guys knock out the two guys. The ones in the shadows knock out the guys that they are waiting for. Like I said, it's, yeah, okay. They won't bother us now, but they're going to bother a certain party plenty. What? Okay, so they knock out the two guys and they go report back to their boss. And then we come to this scene. Where there's trouble, you'll find the law moving in, and often a fellow who was curious way of finding trouble, although his business is really at a chemist shop blocks away. His name is Kip Adams, but he has a secret title too. The world calls him the Flame. So he's sitting here talking to the police officer, and he's talking about how there seems to be a lot of this going on in town recently. So he distracts the police officer by saying there's somebody moving in the shadows, so he can dress up as the Flame. Now let's see who takes to the midnight strolling, or is it spying? There must be a good reason for anyone to be alone on these streets with a crime wave on. Now he just said midnight stroll. Now he stumbles on to Susan, who is Kip's girlfriend. The Flame, thank goodness you frightened me. I'm Susan Page. I was looking for a friend. Someone told me that they saw him heading this way. I wanted to give him a piece of my mind. He stood me up for our date. At midnight? You guys were having a date at midnight? There's no place open at midnight in the 1950s. I mean, in the 1950s, I'd hazard a guess that you wouldn't find anything open past 8 o'clock, maybe even 9. She's talking about Kip, how he's absent-minded. He's a chemist. And he's like, well, I know everybody in the town, but you shouldn't be unescorted at this hour of the night. Yeah, it's midnight. So as they're standing there talking, suddenly a bejeweled arm, I guess we can call it, the bracelets and the rings, holds a gun on them and leads them down a dark alley. Straight in through the door. Don't force me to shoot the girl, Flame. Obey, please. Never knew this place existed. I thought I knew the city. Well, considering that if you knew the city, you should have known this existed. Okay, and as she goes through the door, we hear that she is Miss Sable. And that is the only name she will get, is Sable. Even when she reveals herself, she says she is Miss Sable, businesswoman. Her name is Sable, and she's businesswoman. Name and occupation. So she says that there's kind of an arrow here. It's like a bridge. It was unnecessary. I know how to read comic books. And she says that she needs the Flame's help. The Flame says he wouldn't trust her. So as she's talking to the Flame, I don't like it. Not only did the Prowler disappear, so did Kip. What's going on here? That was unnecessary. Okay, so we go back to the hideout of a different crime. This would be the Spats Gang, S-P-A-T-S. Okay, you did a good job tonight, boys, but I'm tired of the slow way. We need to get rid of Sable herself, and tonight's the night. So he wants to go after Sable in force. He's tired of just waiting on them to show up and then taking them out. Hey, Spats, I got Sable's den spot at last. And guess who she's holding there? The Flame, in person. Now, as the two guys sneak up on this police officer, not a sign of Kip. Is that really your most important thing right there, is the fact that the chemist who works a few blocks away, you just don't see him? Now, they sneak up behind the police officer and they tell him that he could interfere and they don't want him to, so they're knocking him out. That's enough. He'll sleep for a week. Let's get out of here before someone else comes along. Someone's always cramping my style. This is fun. Now, it's funny that she says she requires the Flame's help, and here he is tied up to the chair, and Susan's tied up on the table. I thought you wanted his help. Why would you tie him up? My business is... Okay, here's the explanation of what she's doing. My business is simple. You see, I help certain people enter this country in defiance of the stupid immigration laws. Is this 2025? Anyways, all of these people wore my sign, the brand of the red cat. I received great sums for my trouble. So, the people that we mentioned all the way in the splash page, who is wearing the mark of the red cat, is wearing her symbol. And I guess Spat's gang was going after the people wearing the red cat to throw her out of business. But she says that Spats Mahoney, which is his name, wants to take over her business, so I guess she's making it difficult for her. Now, she says that she's going to put the brand on Susan, and I guess this would make the Flame want to keep an eye on her so she doesn't get bumped off, so that he could go ahead and stop Flame. But she doesn't want the mark. But, I mean, she's asking for help. If she's asking for the help, why would you tie him up? Because she would object to having the Inks brand on her? I don't know. It felt kind of weird. Now, I didn't think he was anywhere close to this Flame, but apparently he is. So he leaps up while using the chair to knock the fire pit over, which seemed completely unnecessary to what they were doing. Let's see. The brand with the red pin. But she said all she was going to do was mark the ink on her. Maybe she was planning on branding her. Yeah. I can see that what she's holding and how it's glowing at the end to represent branding. But, I mean, this is just an odd way to ask for help. Okay, so they start shooting the guards on the outside, and I guess it gets her attention. One of the slugs carries its own warning. Spats and his gang, they found my hideout. Ow, my arm! But I'll escape. And you see a little bit of torn clothing here, so you can see that her arm got nicked. It doesn't look like it went in her arm because we see it in the wall here. And while that all commotion's going out, the Flame has got himself untied from the chair and starts to untie her. And Susan's frightened that they won't be able to get out alive. But it looks like the gang is more important than shooting at each other. They seem to not be taking much notice into the Flame. And as they go up the stairs, they see Sable. Okay, keep away from me, Flame, or I'll send my men after you. Oh, I might have known there would be a complication. So he lets Susan go alone, and he leaps back into the gun battle to fight everybody. Because you see this gun just missing him, and this guy say, "Welcome to the shooting gallery." Now Sable and Susan both make it to the roof. And Sable says, "Stay away from me, I'll push you off the roof." And she starts climbing the wire from one building to the next. And we will focus on them for a second. Susan watches as Sable crosses, and it's like she's going to fall. I can't look, she'll be killed falling that distance. I mean, it only looks like it was 3 stories. Anyways, she can't hold on any longer, and she falls. Now, the cop that was just knocked unconscious by the Billy Jack, which he really shouldn't be recovering this quickly. I mean, the Billy Jacks put people out for hours. He recovers just to have Sable fall onto him, and they both fall unconscious. But poor Charlie is due for another blackout the hard way. A doubleheader. While Susan looks on in horror, the 2 prostrate figures twitch just enough to assure her that they still live in their private worlds of the unconsciousness, but it's no comfort to Susan now. So Susan goes ahead and swings on the wire because she hears Spat's men. Let's see, some of Spat's men seem to have escaped. I'm too tired to go back now. What shall I do? So she swung over to help them, and apparently some of Spat's men are on the ground, but she says she doesn't have enough strength to swing back over, so she goes into their arms. I warn you, if you touch me, you'll answer to the flame. By the time he gets out of the Sable's den, lady, there won't be a flame. By the time he gets out of the den, if he's able to make it out of the den, he'd still be the flame. You're trying to sound tough, but you just made a sentence that didn't make any sense. So everybody who happens to be left inside of the building, he finishes knocking out, and he comes out just in time to see Susan being forced into the car. Good timing, Flame, for Susan sure is scared, and with good reason. So they force her into the car, and they start to take off. Step on it. Do you see who's coming down the street? Even a moving vehicle doesn't stop the Flame when he means business. I didn't mean to hurt her, Flame. I was just taking her home. You don't need to do that. So he turns the wheel and crashes the car into a building, which, as much as the hood crumpled in, that had to be going at some considerable speed, which is really stupid that you caused him to crash into a wall because your girl is in the car. I mean, that thing hit with such incredible force, it threw her out of the vehicle and knocked her unconscious, because she's not unconscious before she flies out, because she's yelling help. But you see her some distance away, which, if she just fell out of the car and the car is lying on its side, it should have fallen on top of her, but I guess the Flame moved her out of the way. I mean, he is super strong. He could have easily have moved the car. In no time flat, police usually appear at the scene of an auto crash. Well, how about the fact that there was gunfire? But now, on the Flame's job is taken over by the proper authority, he can exit gracefully. So she's lying there unconscious, and the cop says, Charlie, where have you been? Out. Susan, is she hurt? She was thrown from a moving vehicle that crashed into the wall, and now she's unconscious. Of course she's hurt. We'll read these last couple of panels. Thank goodness she's still breathing. Kip would never forgive me if she was hurt in my territory. She was thrown from a moving vehicle and knocked unconscious. She got broken bones at the least. Of course she's hurt. Why are you so worried about Kip? Wait, Flame, I can't take credit for rounding up 2 gangs. You'll have to explain. It's your glory. It's all yours, Charlie. Susan will fill in everything you have to know, while she's talking through the obviously broken ribs that she has from being thrown from the car. Only minutes later, the Flame returns as Kip Adams. Kip, you don't know what you missed, boy. It's been like a dream. Say, what's going on, Susan? A little late for our date, aren't you? It's after midnight. Where are you two going that would be on a date after midnight? Because you two got captured at midnight. I'm assuming that in everything that's going on, it's been a couple of hours, so it's probably like at least 1 or 2. If you guys were supposed to meet at like 8 or... You know what? It's over. The end. to the credit of all the stories, none of them says will be continued. They all say the end. Well, I hope you liked this. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, I went down a rabbit hole and found some obscure characters. I can't wait to start going over them. And I will find that one from Centaur. It's gotta be there. I think I know where it is. I just gotta focus on that. Until next time, I'll be seeing you.